really good to be here today.
Hi, how are you?
My name is Tanya Gaw, and I am with Action for Canada. I'll get into a little more of what that's all about, but there's a lot that bring us...
So this lady speaking, she's with something that can really help you if you don't understand how to make a difference with your MLA and things like that. She helps actually write letters
Is that better?
so that you can send them to Parliament and stuff. So let's see what she has to say.
So, as I
Hey, Eddie.
It is tremendous
Hey, Connie.
to be able to come and celebrate this great country. But at the same time, we are coming against some very dark forces who are trying to rob us of our sovereignty and our freedoms and what this country was founded on. And that's what I want to take an opportunity to talk to you about today. I ask you to be patient with what it is that I'm going to be telling you, because it's a process of understanding. We have major forces, and when I say that, the UN is an unelected body, and they are trying to mandate through everything, through the Global Compact on Migration and Sustainable Development Goals. If you aren't familiar with that, it
guys,
will come
look
in
into
and take
sustainable
charge of our
development.
resources, our education, what we teach our children, our banking systems, everything that you could possibly imagine. The UN is dictating to us how we should govern this nation. And Justin Trudeau is complying to every demand that they make.
Yeah.
Action for Canada, there's so many people that are concerned and they don't know what to do. And Action for Canada is an organization that doesn't want to just tell you about all the scary thing that's going on. We want to be able to equip you and encourage you to get involved. So we will write letters, we will do the research, and then we will send them out to an email list, and we will give you the opportunity to sign it yourself, or what you can do is take from the information and write your own and send it to our elected officials, whoever that we happen to be targeting at that time. You must be doing something right. So, minority groups consisting of less than 3% of the population are lobbying 100% of the elected officials to meet their demands. This is how the radical LGBTQ political activists, not the gay and lesbian community, we're talking about radical activists. And we're also talking about how the Islamic radicals as well are coming in 3%, and they're actually having their demands met. When I talk to elected officials, one of the things they say is that we don't hear from the other side. The 90%, if 90% of us got up and wrote letters, called our mayor, called our MLA, and got involved and let them know what was on our heart, what would this country look like right now? The one thing they say is we're too silent, and that's where the silent majority comes in. Well, how about no more? How about each one of you understand the critical point that we're at in this nation and choose to use your voice?
Woo!
It takes sacrifice and commitment to step into this arena, and we do it because we love Canada and we love our fellow Canadians who are being lied to, deceived, and blindly ushered into a system of socialism, oppression, and totalitarianism. The majority seem unaware that their rights and freedoms are being stripped from them. Many of us were born and raised in Canada, but it was a different Canada than what we see today. Many people immigrated to Canada to get away from radical communism or totalitarianism, but it was a different Canada than what they see today, and they're concerned. So what has changed? When my parents immigrated to Canada from Europe after World War II, they had experienced great hardships, and they were very grateful to be here. Within a week of being here, my mom, my grandmother, and 4 uncles signed up for English lessons, which they paid for themselves. They didn't accept anything from the government. They refused to speak their native tongue in public because they wanted to respect Canada's culture. And they were committed to learning the language, integrating, and assimilating. And they never received a dime. They had to work hard to earn their way, and work hard they did. Every one of them became productive members of society, and they raised their children to do the same. Today, there is a much different story unfolding, wherein immigration programs and welfare programs abound. Socialism has taken hold, and for many, they are no longer expected to work hard to achieve their goals, but can rely on the government and their social programs to provide for them. One of the keys to communism is to make people reliant on the government. COVID-19 has catapulted the agenda forward at warp speed as millions of Canadians find themselves currently financially dependent on the government. This is by design. This is not a mistake. If you are not familiar with the 45 goals of communism, then I highly recommend you look it up. We also have people here with some copies to hand out if you would like. Carefully read the steps to communism, as the majority of the goals have already been accomplished and we are well on our way to being destroyed from within. We must act now, and we must rally to hold this government criminally culpable for the crimes they are committing against the citizens of this nation. Treason is an indictable offense, and no one is above the law in Canada. What does the unrolling of communism look like under the Liberal government? I'll name a few points just to give you an idea. Number 26, present homosexuality, degeneracy, and promiscuity as normal, natural, healthy. The Liberals introduced Bill 16, the bathroom bill, and they passed it very swiftly, which allows biological men into women's private spaces, girls' change rooms, and men to compete in women's sports. That's not normal to me. That's not right. Women have come a long way to fight for their protection and their rights, and this needs to be changed. SOGI 123, sexual orientation and gender identity. Many of you may not know about this, but this has entered every single school in BC, and every school across Canada by another name is also accepting this program. They are teaching our children that they can be a boy, a girl, neither, or anything in between. The curriculum was launched in compliance with the UN's Comprehensive Sexuality Education Program to promote what they call sexual rights for children. It is a program that sexualizes children at the earliest age possible, teaching a 4-year-old how to masturbate and causing mass gender confusion, leading to a social contagion wherein children are being put on hormone blockers, leading to sterilization and mutilation of their bodies. This is another form of the globalist population control. Number 20 and 21, they say to gain control of the media. Done. CBC, Global, CTV, all promoting the narrative. Number 27, discredit the Bible and infiltrate the church. Because Canada was based on Christianity, what do they want to wipe out first? Number 22, call into question the founders of this nation and dismantle statues and anything else associated with them. Number 3, disarm Canadians, Bill C-71. Number 11, promote the UN as the only hope for mankind. If its charter is rewritten, demand that it be set upon as a one-world government with its own independent armed forces. Sound familiar? This involves the dismantling of law enforcement in Canada. What will Canada look like without law enforcement? Those whom we rely on for our safety and protection. Wicked leaders are supporting this agenda, but God is a God of justice, and He demands justice of His people. In Deuteronomy, it clearly commands, follow justice and justice alone. This command implies the necessity of law enforcement. God has always given the responsibility of enforcing the law and thereby maintaining justice to man. Defend the weak and the fatherless, uphold the cause of the poor and the oppressed, recuse the weak and the needy, rescue the weak and the needy, and deliver them from the hand of the wicked. One of the most important jobs of every police officer is the restraint of evil in society. A dangerous career, a noble calling, and a profession congruent with a biblical desire for justice and righteousness. Over the years, their job has become increasingly difficult due to the establishment of unequal law created by politicians seeking votes. Virtue signaling and political correctness have become the norm. The tyranny is blatant, but the tools of warfare have been a stealthy and strategic military attack using psychological warfare to pit Canadians against one another. Race baiting, victimization, guilt, entitlement, stirring up resentment and envy was incrementally implemented over time. a slow wearing down of society to accept the erosion of our sovereignty, heritage, and charter rights and freedoms. Trudeau has accused Canadians of systemic racism, but what is going on has nothing to do with race or the color of anyone's skin. What we are faced with is a much more complex matter. When multiculturalism was introduced by Pierre Elliott Trudeau, he did so without fully considering the impact it would have, that it would tear at the culture fabric of Canada. In fact, it is reported on July 24, 2016, Martin Collicott wrote an article in response to a Simon Fraser University panel held on multiculturalism. He wrote the following: I think it is also worth pointing out that some of the key people who were originally created multicultural policy became disillusioned with how it had evolved over the years. Pierre Trudeau, who is widely regarded as one of the principal architects of multiculturalism policy when it was launched in the early 1970s, when asked in 1995 what he thought of how the policy had evolved in the intervening years, Trudeau responded to the effect that it had been twisted to celebrate a newcomer's country of origin rather than a celebration of the newcomer becoming part of the Canadian fabric. He was right, and as a result, multiculturalism worldwide is being recognized as a failure, a failed social experiment if the host country's values are not being embraced. Canada is a country divided, and that divide is growing. We have nations being built within our nation. Colonies consisting of different cultures are forming, and some are demanding that their failed system of governance be transplanted here to replace Canadian culture and rule of law. We all know which groups are most active in forcing anti-Canadian values and who are using our Charter of Rights and Freedoms, specifically religious freedom, to advance their agenda. Not only have they infiltrated our government, but they are successfully imposing their beliefs on Canadians. Racism is just a very easy and convenient card to play in a majority white European nation to distract from what is really going on. There are two things I wish to say in response to this. First is that Canada was founded on Judeo-Christian principles, inherited through our British Commonwealth and embedded in our Magna Carta. It forms our laws and our values and is a system of governance that sets us apart from totalitarian, extremist, and communist regimes. Regimes who impoverish and oppress their citizens and prohibit the freedoms that we take for granted, such as the freedom of speech, thought, and religion. Our system of governance gives you the freedom to believe or not to believe without the fear of death or persecution. If you are at odds with this statement, then I challenge you to think about whether or not you would give up living in Canada to live in one of the 57 Islamic majority countries, or communist China, North Korea, or possibly Pakistan. The UN and globalist elites have only focused on Christian nations when imposing multiculturalism. All the nations just listed had the right to maintain their own sovereignty and cultural belief systems. But Canadians have had many cultures imposed on them, and yet we are instructed to not only embrace them, but to capitulate and surrender our own. This does not make sense. Is it racist to say we love Canada and the values from which Canada was founded on? Are other nations being condemned for demanding that their culture be respected? Why the double standard for Canadians? Why didn't we have a choice? Did you vote for a multicultural nation? This is a bicultural nation, and we need to take a stand. What happens if Canada continues down this road? Will we continue to be a beacon of hope for those who are actually fleeing persecution? People are coming to Canada because of our Christian roots. Our values and the rule of law were established from the 10 Commandments. Not all cultures are the same. Some cultures are better than others. We naively assume all other cultures in the world are like us and will give mutual respect to our way of life. But this is being proven wrong. Through the commandments, we are instructed to love our neighbors as ourselves and do unto others as you would have them do unto you. While other cultures and religions instruct death and persecution of their fellow man if they do not embrace their political and religious ideology. It is true that some cultures are incompatible and unable to coexist. So why are we willingly, knowingly allowing them to enter our society in government positions and implement motions to shut us down so they can take over? The second point I would like to make is regarding the allegation of systemic racism, which, as I have just pointed out, we do not have a problem with racism because this has nothing to do with race or the color of one's skin. This is about the condition of the heart and systems of belief. Further, are you aware that it was Christian Canadians and the British Empire who worked to abolish slavery? In fact, the British Empire took out a loan worth about $200 billion today to buy the freedom of every slave in the empire. You won't hear this in the mainstream media. Hundreds of people gave their lives for the freedom of slavery. It is appalling, therefore, that Justin Trudeau and recently Jagmeet Singh would accuse Canadians of systemic racism. I have always had friends of different shapes and sizes, and yes, color. But I never focused on the color. I don't have Filipino friends and Chinese friends and friends from India. I just have friends. I have Canadian friends. So it comes as quite a surprise to be advised by the Prime Minister, and this is where all the race baiting and the hatred that he is condoning comes in, when he ends up referring to us as intolerant, far-right, white-privileged, racist, bigoted Islamophobes who need to take a knee and apologize for offenses that we are not guilty of. Yep. So what is the truth about Canada and Canadians? The fact is, we have been a very generous nation. Our history is one in which we can be proud of and grateful for the pioneers who dared to make a better life in coming here. Now more than ever, all Canadians must appreciate and embrace the foundation upon which this country was built. We need to protect our heritage and the symbols of those who founded this great nation, none of whom were without flaws, but all who aspired to building a free and civil society. It was a different time 153 years ago, and we have come a long way in evolving into a nation that respects the rights of the individual. Justin Trudeau feeds off victimization, exploiting them for personal and political gain. People do not thrive when they are kept in a state of perpetual victimhood. They thrive when they are told they can achieve anything they put their mind to, and then work to make it happen. Trudeau also claims that diversity is our strength. Common sense says otherwise, and the proof of a very divided country is evidence that this is just not working out. Unity is our strength, and moving forward, uniting this country must take precedence over all social justice causes and political correctness. We have been a very tolerant country, but have we gone too far? Has political correctness, masked as social justice, become a tool to drive a socialist agenda? This is an important question and one which we must address. Canada is one of the most tolerant and accepting countries in the world, but tolerance must have its limits, or as we are experiencing, lawlessness and chaos will ensue. We need to uphold our rule of law, equal law for all, law that is colorblind and can no longer be manipulated by a corrupt judicial system or corrupt politicians, law that applies no matter what your status or position. The Charter of Rights needs to be amended or abolished, as it was implemented without consent from Canadians and created dueling individual rights, providing the opportunity for special interest groups to attain privilege over the rights of the majority. The Liberal government has been working overtime to divide this nation and pit one another against each other. Let's not let him do it any longer. We must unite. Other political parties have joined the assault against Canadians to pander to minority groups. Because of it, our Constitution is being plundered and our rule of law violated to the extent that we no longer espouse equal justice or equal law for all. It has become a thing of the past, and in its place, growing resentment, fear, and chaos is taking hold. In response, many individual Canadians and organizations are uniting with the sole purpose to rise up against the tyranny and corruption within our government. We need to fight for our freedoms because nothing worth having comes without a cost. Thomas Paine said, "Those who expect to reap the blessings of freedom must, like men, undergo the fatigues of supporting it." We must protect freedom of speech. This is a hill to die on, because without it, we will fall into oppression and tyranny. The freedom to protect our borders was established by God. In Acts 17:26 it says, "And he, God, made from one man every nation of mankind to live on the face of the earth, having determined their appointed times and the boundaries of their habitation." We have every right to be protecting our border from people illegally crossing into this nation. And last but not least, the freedom of religion must be defended vigorously, as Canada was founded on Judeo-Christian principles, and this is the nucleus from which our freedoms exist. Canadians have consistently been fed a lie that we are a secular nation with no core identity. And when repeated often enough, a lie becomes a dangerous weapon, capable of toppling great nations. Justin Trudeau has made his disdain for Canada's system of governance well known, and has not hidden his admiration for the Chinese Communist regime and other dictators such as Fidel Castro. Therefore, I encourage you to rethink the narrative and consider why our nation is set apart from totalitarian, communist, and extremist regimes who oppress their people, dictate thought, and impoverish their citizens, much like what we are going through now. How many hundreds of billions of dollars do we have to go through before Justin Trudeau is removed from office and held accountable for what he is doing to the people of this nation? Action for Canada is committed to speaking the truth regarding these issues and dispelling any new normal that does not support our heritage. Canadians have a duty and a right and an obligation to protect our national sovereignty, national security, and rule of law. We will not be forced to bow to the idol of Marxism or take a knee to fascism.
Woo!
Through a collaborated effort, we, the Canadian, will become a formidable team, a force to be reckoned with. Action for Canada invites you to join us. We do not have to agree on everything, but we can unite on our common goal. Since the UN is inserting their communist agenda into every aspect of Canadian governance, and since the current Liberal and NDP parties are supporting this takeover, we have a common enemy. And therefore, we invite you to be part of the movement to restore Canadian democracy from coast to coast. I'd like to close with this quote by the Right Honourable Diefenbaker, former Prime Minister of Canada. "I am a Canadian, free to speak without fear, free to worship God in my own way, free to stand up for what I think, free to oppose what I believe wrong, free to choose those who shall govern my country. This heritage of freedom I pledge to uphold for myself and all of mankind." God bless you, and God bless Canada. Thank you.